Welcome everyone, welcome to the final episode of Equals this season. This is Nabil.
And this is Max.
And welcome Winnie for joining us for this episode.
Thank you, hi.
Winnie, we're closing out the season, we're looking back. I've got to ask you the first question, right, because you've been a freedom fighter, you've led us at Oxfam for the last 6.5 years, you've been with us through the journey of this podcast. Have you learned something new about inequality? What has been the highlight for you?
Well, Nabil and Max, the highlight for me, without doubt, was the interview I had with Beth from Dandora, the biggest slum in Africa, here in Nairobi. She was amazing. For me, I heard a voice of a very serious, committed political activist who has a goal, a strategy, and tactics, is fighting, has injuries and scars to show for her fight, and is determined to move on. I was inspired.
I think we really were also inspired by Beth, also by Elena Mohia, who is from Peru. He's also an activist. She's part of the youth movement there. She's been bruised. She even talked to us about how she was shot actually in her struggle, and really the tactics that she's deployed with other young people. Max, do you remember that moment that she spoke to us about how she and others, they brought the trade unions together, they brought the LGBTQI activists together, they brought the youth movements together, and they won that battle, didn't they?
They did. And one of the things that struck me about Beth and also about Elena was this understanding of history and wanting to look back at previous struggles and really situating their battles today in the history of what had gone before them. And I thought that was really inspiring as well.
You know, the thing about Beth is that she's an activist in a slum in the city of Nairobi. I thought to myself, if we had a Beth in every community, in every part of this city would transform. If you had Beths in every town of this country would transform. It's about connecting the struggles. They are fighting on housing, they are fighting on education, they are fighting against violence against women, they are fighting for water, they are fighting on many fronts, and they are brave and they are dedicated and they have got a strategy. But you know, Max, you mentioned a sense of history. That I also saw in Beth, that she understands that she's part of a long struggle that will not start and end with her, but started before and will be continued by others. So Beth, to me, pointed to the history of these struggles, but most importantly, it was Rutger, the historian, who did it for me.
Yeah.
Rutger, he blew my mind. He showed us how some people sat in a room somewhere in America and concocted this whole idea of how this economy should run for the benefit of a few at the top. And today we are in this structure of the economy that maximizes for a few people and cheats the majority, and we think it is God-given, it came from heaven, when it came from a lecture room somewhere in America. It did it for me.
Yeah, I agree. Stiglitz was very good on that too. I think he didn't mince his words. I mean, here is a Nobel Prize winning, one of the most famous economists in the world, and he talked about the current economic system and the idea that if the rich get very rich, it will trickle down and benefit everyone. And he called it a gigantic lie. I mean, he didn't mince his words at all. It was very powerful.
But you know, the funny bit he said for me, I will not forget, was when he compared the hard work that poor people put in and getting nothing for their hard work, and how the rich, lazy, with money in their accounts, playing golf, I will not mention names, now get profits just for owning money in a bank account. How ridiculous.
I mean, Joe Stiglitz was amazing. And the other thing I took from him is that he had this massive deconstruction. He also gave us so much hope, didn't he? He basically said that in all his time looking at what's the ideas on the move, he said progressive ideas are on the move. He said things are changing. He said demographics are on our side. And we saw that really kind of come alive through that politician that we met, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Winnie, what did you think of your conversation with her?
Wow, it was really a great honor to go to Capitol Hill and meet this young woman in her office, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. This woman, an African woman who was a refugee, migrated to America, who is black, who comes from a poor background, who is a Muslim woman, encompasses all these axes of disadvantage, and told me that for me, that is my strength. That is what I take into the room, and that's what I represent. And when you look at all the issues she works on, from fighting against student debt, migrant issues, women's rights, violence against women, workers' rights, you see her cutting across and putting many struggles together. That's the future. I saw a young woman leader pointing to the future who is scaring the whole establishment of American power.
So hopeful, so hopeful.
I mean, talking about hope there, I was really inspired as well by the interview that you had, Winnie, with Abigail Disney. Now, she's a granddaughter of Walt Disney, she's a billionaire, and she's shaking things up.
Let's be clear here. Not a billionaire, she's just a multimillionaire.
Just hundreds of, and choosing not to be, anyway.
Hundreds of millions, yeah. She's pretty rich.
And she's part of the patriotic millionaires.
I mean, only in America could you have something as amazing as a group that come together, super rich people, and not only say that they should be taxed more, they demand that they say that it's unpatriotic to avoid taxes. Amazing.
Only in America.
There's almost like a fairy tale quality to her story.
It is a Disney fairy tale, but she's a powerful leader, my God. Great respect for Abigail Disney. She really she speaks truth to power. She speaks with legitimacy because she has the millions, but speaks about justice for everybody, a decent life for everybody. Forces are aligning here. When billionaires, workers, people in the slums like Beth, leaders, young people come together, there is reason to hope.
Definitely reason to hope. It's very exciting.
It really is. And what a journey we've been on, Winnie, for season 1 of the podcast, which is now coming to the end. But the other thing I got to say, it's not just the end of season 1 of the podcast, is it? Because it's your final days now here at Oxfam. You've led us now for 6.5 years, and you're leaving. It feels like the end of an era.
Yes, I am. All good things come to an end. It's been a really roller coaster ride. I've loved it. It's been a privilege to be a leader in this struggle and a leader at Oxfam. But you know, you people, you're going to carry it on. And new energy, new ideas, new force is going to come into Oxfam. It was a good moment for me to move on. I'm going to be watching you.
We're going to be missing you, Winnie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not missing you that much. I mean, we're moving on ourselves. We're moving on to season 2 of the podcast.
Don't rub it in, Max.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
I'm
miss
still
you.
the boss up to midnight, you know.
Just for a few more hours, you know.
I could write a bad report on you.
Oh yeah, we have to do. Yeah, we do have to get that done, don't we?
Yeah. Anyway, I just hope I'm going to be watching this podcast, listening in. I want to hear you speaking to these young activists who are challenging for climate action. I want to see you bringing these young people I see on the streets in Lebanon and Chile, taking on governments that are siding with the billionaires. I want to see you bringing the activists here on the show. Will you do that?
That we will do, Winnie. That we will do. Right, Max?
Definitely. And it's going to be inspiring. I think there's so many amazing stories out there. There's so much hope, and the fight against inequality is so important. So this podcast is hopefully going to make an impact on that.
And Winnie, we love your suggestions as well. But I've got to put a big ask out there to our listeners to say, email us in with your suggestions too to equals@oxfam.org. equals@oxfam.org. How can we do things differently? Who can we invite onto the show? Give us feedback, and definitely do subscribe.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.